Honorable MEP, prospective MEPs, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I'd like to go directly to the theme of our meeting today and to specifically emphasize on the European Union and our future. The EU is a unique project conceived on the principles that peace will lead to a higher standard of living and of economic growth. But as we have seen over time, this vision does not come easy. Indeed, to have a future, I trust we all agree that one needs to be competitive and innovative. And in today's dynamic markets, being competitive and innovative means being capable to craft one's own future. The European Union today is a reality, and thankfully, we are not questioning that point and that fact any longer. Our future, now more than ever before, is fundamentally linked to that of Europe. And in order to craft one's own future now, within the European structures, we need to have the best brains to influence the decision-making process that ultimately impacts us all directly. And this becomes even more so relevant when one considers the fact that we would have only 6 out of the 760+ delegates representing us. At this point, I would wish to address the MEPs and the candidates, our brains in future Europe, and who have kindly accepted to join us today. As you are aware, and I go directly to our manifesto, was already presented during one of MHRA's events held earlier this year. Those of you who will be chosen to represent us in the European Parliament need to take up our cause. Actually, it's Malta's cause, and it has to be done with utmost commitment. The hospitality industry in Malta is key. We know that it represents 30% of GDP and 35% of government's cumulative revenues, which is substantially more than the vast majority of other EU countries. It is definitely one of the few industries that keep creating jobs in spite of any downturn trends in the economy. But we want to achieve more than what we have achieved to date on this front, as we believe that there is potential to grow. In Malta, as we all know, and we all live here, at times one may not fully appreciate what an incredible country we have. The smallest country in the EU with very scarce natural resources, and yet our hospitality industry has over the past few years delivered highly satisfactory results. And the good news is that we still have very positive forecasts ahead of us. One word of caution, though, is that the industry is very fragile, and it is necessary that we don't take matters for granted. The realization of the objectives set in our manifesto cannot be achieved without your direct intervention and direct support in the European Parliament. We are specifically calling for your support to ensure that tourism is put at the center of European economic policy. In this light, an intergroup on tourism in the European Parliament should be established to include all relevant stakeholders. We propose that this intergroup would monitor all political developments with a likely impact on the hospitality sector and ensure that the industry's interests are properly considered. We are also expecting that one of our elected MEPs commits to participate in the Transport and Tourism Committee, whilst the others keep in mind the tourism agenda when representing Malta in the other working committees. This specific and targeted focus is necessary as tourism impacts, as in turn is impacted by many other regulatory frameworks. European hospitality, together with other tourism industries, is not simply an economic activity, but has become the third largest socio-economic activity in Europe. Hence, so very critical to Europe's and even more so for Malta's competitiveness and economic well-being. Our manifesto, as prepared with our European partners, is directed to protect this position and intends to improve further the opportunities available. Indeed, we are calling for 4 general principles to be the guiding values in all future legislation. Firstly, and this was also referred to by Mr. Borch, where subsidiarity as a leading principle should prevail. The EU should refrain from legislating on aspects that have no justified single market dimension. For example, we have proposals as official controls in restaurants, where a new proposal intends to make restaurants pay a fee covering the cost of inspections. This fee will simply be an added tax burden, while at the same time having clearly no single market impact. Secondly, smarter regulations, and we believe that self-regulation should be promoted and burdensome over-regulation avoided. For example, in the discussion on accessibility, we believe that to be efficient and reduce burden on SMEs, any future legislation should stay as much as possible at national level. Flexibility and reasonable requirements are the key drivers for success here. Another example is the food in restaurants, where recently adopted food information regulations will make it harder for restaurants to make use of fresh food. Any future EU legislation should not result in an effective ban on the use of fresh food. Thirdly, we've heard a lot about this, is elimination of red tape and removing extra administrative burdens, which is key in facilitating competitiveness of the enterprises. And as an example here, I can quote the visa policy, where we're proposing the use of intelligent technical solution to facilitate procurement, visa procurement, in particular for all BRICS countries. One must also take into consideration, obviously, besides the contribution of tourism to the economy, the reasonable considerations for any security issues. We also refer to the data protection, where any future regulation should not impose new obligations on the industry. Especially, for example, there is a specific requirement to appoint a data protection officer, which would be simply an added burden on SMEs. Fourthly, and lastly, but equally important, is making it easier for SMEs to access EU funds. Again, something which we have heard a lot about this, but we don't believe that much has been achieved. The tourism industry should have more access to EU financial instruments that make it easier for entrepreneurs to support growth and employment opportunities. Let us allocate funds where returns are guaranteed, practically on all levels. I will not go through all the others, but there are other points that we have highlighted for our MEPs to monitor for the years to come in any future legislation that we believe that could seriously affect competitiveness and fair competition across the industry. Specifically, is the EU employment and the lack of flexibility there. It's very crucial that this will be retained, flexibility will be retained. Fair competition on online distribution, the strong position of OTAs. In relation to private accommodation, again, this is an issue where a number of owners renting private apartments, normally through online distribution channels, and at times without respecting regulations applicable to the hospitality industry, which in itself would create also a threat to customer protection and also to jobs in the hotel industry. There is also the issue of interchange fees, where we are proposing that processing of cards would be reduced, and we ban charges on debit cards and cap charges for credit cards. The challenges ahead are not few, and we as MHRA assure you our support through our offices and network in Brussels, through our MBB offices, through HOTREC, and direct as and when necessary. We need all hands on deck to push for the tourism agenda, in particular in promoting the Mediterranean dimension to tourism and hospitality. This is in line with our vision of setting up the Mediterranean Tourism Forum in Malta. Again, all this is not simply for our own sake, but for the ultimate benefit of our islands. MHRA pledges that in 1 year's time, we will organize a similar event directly or through MBB, and those of you who will be elected will be asked to share with us all that we would have managed to achieve for our industry, the key motor of the Maltese economy. And on behalf of MHRA, I sincerely thank you for the work, the hard work that you are going through, you have done already. I wish you success in the forthcoming elections. I hope all of you will be there. I know it's very difficult, but we still wish you all the success. And thank you.
Thank you, Paul.